Welcome to Nerd Wars, and you guessed it, I really enjoy Godzilla Minus One. If that offends you, then you should probably just leave now. I personally give it a solid 9 out of 10. So for general audiences, I'm giving it an 8, 8.5, but for myself, solid 9. Which for my rating system that has no system, I'm trying to reserve that for movies I very much so enjoy and are also very well made. And Godzilla Minus One definitely fits that. But modern audiences, but for my nerds, you need to see this. Like, honestly, just stop watching this. Just go see it. Leave this playing muted in the background for the algorithm and just go see this movie. Preferably in a premium format if you can. The theater by me is a Regal, and they've got RPX as their, like, premium thing. It really, I think, just means a lot more bass, and oh boy, seats were shaking in this movie throughout this movie. And yet, despite all the Gajira kaiju and the rumbly bass, I was walking to my car and was like, my eye is a little moist here in the corner for some reason. So great giant monster destroying everything scenes, but also really great character stuff. Acting, couldn't understand a darn word. I don't know where they're from in America. Like, I could not understand their accents. Thankfully, there were subtitles the whole time. The lead male and the lead female, both fantastic job. Couldn't understand a darn word they said, though. I'm not really normally a subtitle kind of guy. I'm a dub kind of guy. Both of them outacted everyone in the Marvels and Napoleon combined. I should probably mention I started doing my reviews recently, starting with The Marvels, and then I thought Napoleon was going to be good. I could wash the taste of cat lady out of my mouth. It got a very generous 4.5. So I've been desperately needing that good movie. Go ahead and mute this, let it play in the background for the algorithm, and just go see this movie. Bunch of side characters, like them all. All had their own little characteristics and little story arcs. Couldn't understand a darn word they were saying. And yet I really liked them. A lot of very moving moments. Also, the Godzilla heat ray, like nuclear blast, oh my god. But then also like dealing with PTSD and like post-World War II Japan and kamikazes and stuff like that. And also Godzilla chomping on people and then throwing them into the atmosphere. And also like adorable little orphan girl. But then also Godzilla stomping on people. 9 out of 10. Length, perfect. Never once was I like, this is dragging on. Wonder what time it is. We got to the final fight, and they had some really good epic music playing. My feet were going. I was ready to go. I was pumped. I was like, let's do this final fight. Napoleon, I was like, this isn't over yet? He got exiled. I thought that's how it ended. He has to get double exiled? In this, I was like, when's the sequel coming out? Godzilla Minus 2? Would your boomer parents like it? If they have good taste, definitely. If they're just normie boomers, they probably don't want to do the subtitles and Japanese stuff anyways. Pretty much all nerds I would recommend it to, even if you're not really into Godzilla. I think I've seen like one of the actual like Japanese Godzillas, which is that company is the one who made this. And then I've seen the new ones. In the new ones, everyone's like, get the humans out of this. We just want to see monsters fight. And the humans are such a good part of it. And I could understand every word that Tyler Aaron Johnston said. And you didn't care about any of those characters. Couldn't understand a darn word these people said. But boy, were they passionate when they said it. And I cared way, way, way more about them. Like all of them. And there were real stakes. And there were like real people. But like a real world. Despite it being a giant monster movie. Napoleon is so bad, like the acting. I was wondering if Joaquin Phoenix was having like withdrawals. This movie gave me so many goosebumps. Couldn't understand a lick of it. Music, awesome. Yes. Go see it in a premium format if you can. Action, oh my god, it's so good. I like laughed or I made so many noises. Like those were involuntary noises. Starting from like the very first time Godzilla shows up. You get pumped, you get invested, you feel like you're in the world, you care. The editing is actually half decent, unlike Napoleon, where you just get lost and you're like, what's going on? Cinematography wasn't too fancy, but plenty of good shots. You were always visually entertained, but without the ridiculous amount of CGI that Hollywood has to rely on to keep your eyes from wandering. Things were able to actually like breathe a bit. CGI was quite good. Couple moments where it wasn't the best. Gojira moved a little weird, but it reminded me of the old Godzillas. So it actually kind of worked in the bad CGI places. And Gojira himself, thick, super thick. He's definitely got the super weird proportions from the Japanese movies. That is for sure. And the laser, as I said, the atomic blast. So good. Mute this video and go watch it. I think that covers about everything. Acting was great. Characterization, story, the occasional messing with expectations, the occasional just brutality, the realness of that post-World War II Japan, the settings and like the just destroyed like rubble town and the little building they live in, everyone's costumes and everything. You really do get sucked into the world, even though you can't understand a lick of it. Now I'm going to get a little deeper into it without many spoilers to talk about why I liked it so much. But if you have any interest in seeing this, like anytime before waiting like 6 months, just go ahead and mute it, let it play in the background, and just go see this movie. I'm not going to really spoil too much, but like yeah, you'll have expectations and such. Just go see the movie. For those of you who are like, it'll probably be like 6 months, then here we go. Here's why you definitely should make sure you see this at some point. Opens with, of course, a Gojira attack on Odo Island. Earlier, you see some deep sea fish come up and float about, and it's like, well, that's weird. And then later that night, Gojira attacks, except he's only like T-Rex size at this point. And there are a bunch of Japanese soldiers stationed on the island. So Gojira attacks. So most of the guys go and hide in their trench, but the main character, he goes into his plane. He's got Godzilla lined up in the sights. He's ready to shoot him. But he's worried that if he shoots him, it's not going to work, and then they're all screwed. So he doesn't shoot. So then the guys get scared in the trench. Of course, someone shoots, and then they all shoot. And someone's like, just stop shooting. And then they just all keep shooting. And that doesn't go very well for them. And it's everything you want out of the opening scene of Gojira. And it's also a really interesting seeing Gojira like T-Rex size. Two dudes get flung into the stratosphere. You get to see great like foot coming down scenes. You get like right where you're right below him, and he's like, and then he eats a dude. I was already so pumped. And then main character, which I'm going to call Koichi because that's his last name, that only gets used a few times, but his first name, which is kind of like his actual last name, because Japanese people are kind of weird. I can't pronounce the other name that they usually use, and the words they say never once sounded anything like how it was spelled and I would say it. So he's Koichi. He wakes up and everyone is dead but one person, the lead mechanic, and he is not happy. Koichi did not shoot Gojira. Now Urgati's dead. So that can be a little scarring on a person. And he's back to the mainland, and it's not doing so well because the air raids that his parents had been killed in. And he just randomly like sees a baby girl on the street. This is a baby. I guess this is my baby now. But then the baby's mom is just right around the corner. You cared for the baby. And then she kind of just latches onto him, even though he doesn't want her to. And you kind of think she's just like a street urchin trying to use him, follows him back home and just stays with him. And he's like, you can't stay with me. And then she's just like, well, I'm asleep now. And so he's kind of just stuck with her. But then it turns out the baby isn't even hers. Her parents had also died in the air raids, and another woman had asked her to take care of the baby. So he's taking care of a woman who's taking care of a baby. None of them married or related. But then they kind of end up living together and kind of make their own little family, even though they're not actually together. And then like the brutality of war and whatnot, it's super sweet and wholesome. And he's all about taking care of them, and he wants to get a job, finds one. It's a mine disposal team. Little dangerous, but it pays well. And so we meet the team, and they are all great. Captain is probably the best character in the whole movie, out of a lot of great characters. And then you got the different archetypes. You got Kid. He was too young to fight in the war, so they treat him like he's too young, and they're like, hey, you didn't fight in the war. But then like by the end, they handled all the post-World War II stuff so good. And then you've got Doc, who's the science smart guy. Long curly hair and such, of course. It's perfect. They're freaking perfect. So they're out doing mine stuff. You learn about that. Eventually, you see a giant destroyed boat. And they're like, why are we out here? And it's like, well, the governments can't send anything because Cold War and that sort of stuff. So they hired us to be a distraction for something. And that's when we get our first Godzilla boat chase, and it's so good. Just go see it. Just go see the movie. It's exactly what you want. And then when he gets back from that whole ordeal, which brought everything back, he finally admits to Noriko that he chickened out of being a kamikaze. He had pretended like something was wrong with his plane. The war had already been lost, and he didn't want to just throw away his life for a lost cause. So he chickened out of being a kamikaze, and then he chickened out of shooting Godzilla. He had some time to get through that, got a job, and now he sees Godzilla fudge some things up. So he finally tells her what's going on with that. And she talks about how she's a survivor. Her parents died too, oh, Mr. Pretty Party over here. And how they must survive. And a bunch of PTSD stuff. It's kind of some awkward. He kind of like tackles her a little bit. But it comes up a couple times. He thinks that he died. He died on that beach. Godzilla killed him. And that this is just a dream.
Shut up and take my money.
Then he works through all that and he decides he wants to live. But Godzilla has other things in mind. And the boats, they try to stop Godzilla. Doesn't go very well. Many boats get flung through the air, vast distances, and Godzilla attacks Ginza. And that's when I really noticed thick boy. Oh my god, he's like 90% of his body is below his waist. And Noriko had picked up a job in Ginza, because, they weren't married yet. Why won't he marry her? He done girl bossed and got herself a job. And how did that go? Well, Noriko's on a train in a city Godzilla's attacking. Main character on a train. Yeah. She ends up like basically in Godzilla's mouth. She's like hanging like monkey bar style at one point. Eventually has to drop down into the water and such. He's running through the city. Godzilla's like right behind motherfuckers like so many times. So I'm like, run! Like take a left or a right. And then he does like a tail sweep and takes out all of that. And I'm like, okay, maybe don't listen to me. And we get, I'm fairly certain, it sounded like two kind of in the back mixed in. I'm fairly sure they snuck two secret Wilhelm screams in at that moment. And then Noriko's about to get fudged up. Godzilla's got her in his sights. And then bam, he gets hit by some tanks. And we know what Godzilla does to some tanks. Tails like and like all blue energy, and it's so good. And then the blast is really good. The explosion is perfect, and the roar afterwards is so good. Right as Godzilla gets hit by the tanks before he decides to fudge him up real good like, Koichi shows up and grabs Noriko, and they're running. But then, atomic blast happens. Noriko sees it coming, pushes Koichi into an alley, and then she gone. See you, Noriko. He just decided he wanted to live. Once he realizes what happens, that Noriko's gone, he's in the street and he looks at Godzilla and he lets out that "I'm gonna get vengeance on your ass" scream. Oh, like the Godzilla roars were very good in this movie. Koichi's roar also was quite good. And then he's staring at his parents' shrine, thinks he's cursed, basically, that he was supposed to die being a kamikaze, and he's basically being punished for not dying. It's so good! Oh my god. So they gotta stop Godzilla, because next target obviously is gonna be Tokyo. Why? Don't worry about it. So we're ready for some vengeance against Godzilla. Sadly, though, because of the Cold War, the governments can't help very much, or it's going to cause nuclear war. And as we all know, that would create more Godzillas. And of course, Japan's been a bit disarmed at this point. They must form a citizen brigade to stop Godzilla. Yes! And the meeting was great. All the random citizens calling out like the plot holes and how this isn't going to work and stuff like that. And then eventually there's the, I'm not forcing you to do this. You're not being conscripted. So if you can't do this, leave now. And then one of the guys who stays says, does this mission mean certain death? Doc says, no, it doesn't mean certain death. And the citizen says, well, hey, that sounds better than the war. And everyone's like, hoorah, let's take on Godzilla. But how? Well, thankfully, Doc's a bigwig, knows all the science stuff, and he comes up with a plan. They're literally like showing the citizens, so they find a good way to explain it to us. So Koichi, who was a pilot, wants to extract Godzilla. And they don't really have a lot of planes these days on account of them being disarmed. But they find a special plane, like a top secret one that had basically been shelved because it had never been used. But the only person he wants to fix up the plane in time, the other survivor from Odo Island, the opening attack. The guy who blames him for everyone dying. He shows up and kicks his ass. And Koichi kind of seems fine with it. He basically wants to die. He's lost everything now, basically. And he wants to be punished. And somewhere around here, the captain asks him if he has a death wish. Certainly seems that way. That night, before the big day, while they're sitting around, they finally ask him why he didn't marry Noriko before she got gone. Well, because my war isn't over. He never carried out what he was supposed to do. He doesn't want to get married because he feels like he should die. So good! It definitely washed the taste of the Marvels and Napoleon out my mouth. So they fix up the plane and he has to leave his daughter. So at this point now he does consider his daughter, which also took a while. Character growth. How strange. Hollywood, have you heard of this character growth thing? And he's ready to go kamikaze into Gajira. And that's, you go see this movie. The final fight, all I'm going to say is at that moment when all hope is lost, silence for like 7 seconds, maybe even like 10. I'm a fan, as an editor, I'm a fan of using silence, especially after something like powerful or emotional. You just have that song in right there on a really good beat. Silence. I like, black screen, especially after all the rumbles and explosions and whatnot. And then it just comes in with that plane. And then 2 moments at the end that I'm not crying, you're crying. And then at the end, someone asks him, Hollywood, what's wrong with you guys? It's really not that hard. Freaking kaiju movie did it. Honestly, at this point, I'm fine with Japan and Korea just taking over entertainment at this point. Have you seen the movie yet? Tell me if you're going to go see the movie. Or else I'm telling Mama Susan you're being mean to the algorithm. Get access to exclusive videos and become a producer at my Subscribe Star. Links in the description.